Here on the Cam Show, brought to you by Rogue Media Sports Network, a very special guest that needs no introduction, but I'll give one to you anyway. A fellow son of the South Shore, the Irish Riviera, from, well, I won't say where you're from, Jerry, but Jerry Thornton from Barstool Sports, the Patriots expert, joining the show as we're just a few weeks away from week one, but more importantly for us Patriots fans now, just a few days away from preseason week 3, which is going to be a big deal for this team and what you care about, the quarterback situation. So, Jerry, tell me, how's your summer been so far?
Cam, it's been great. I've been down to the camp a few times. When people are not asking me about the Karen Reed trial, which has kind of faded into the background a little
Yeah.
bit, I've been getting a lot of conversations about the Patriots, which is great. It's not. I try not to think of it as Christmas. I kind of think of like this time of year as like the Advent calendar. Like
Mm.
it's December 1st and you get to open up the little paper door and there's a little treat behind there. And then you see how it all goes. And then most the good years, Christmas Eve is like the Super Bowl. Okay, not there. I'm not there yet. I'm fine. Maybe you're like me. I'm really adjusting on the fly to this new world order that we're in. Coming off a 4-13 season, which you have to be like, I don't know, probably 40, 50 to
Mhm.
remember the last one that was anything like this. And seeing that every game is virtually Sunday at 1 this year.
Yeah.
The Irish Rose, my beloved bride, every spring she gives me this speech about, hey, when the fall comes, we got to take a weekend and go do fall things. And I always say, so you're referring to what I call NFL Sunday? She's like, oh yeah, oh. Well, see what weekends the Patriots have off. Well, the schedule comes out in mid-June. I'm mid-May, and I look at it this year, and they've got the Thursday nighter in week 3,
Mhm.
and then it's Sunday afternoon, so that one Sunday morning, all year long until the bye week in December 8th. I'm like, good
You
luck,
skip
honey.
over foliage completely, really.
Yeah, I go, we can go wheels up after I'm done writing about that Jets game, which is on like the Thursday night, I think the 19th.
Mhm.
Like, fill the weekend with apple picking and corn mazes and wearing flannel and like drinking cider or whatever cliche, looking at covered bridges, whatever you want to do. The world just doesn't care about us for the time being.
Mm.
They will
Yeah.
soon. They will hear our mighty steps, but for now it's this weird kind of world that we live in where they are straight up irrelevant outside of, as you alluded to, the question of the quarterbacks. Everything else, the world is just kind of shrugging and yawning and going, hey, I wonder what Mahomes and Kelsey are up to.
Yeah. Did you see that behind the back pass? Like, it's just going to be stuff like that. I thought it was funny that you said that you're getting adjusted to this on the fly. Meanwhile, the people of my generation who are now closer to 30 than to 20 have like literally never had this and never gone into a season with this low of expectations. 2020 was weird with Cam. We kind of didn't know what we were going to get. And last year, I mean, the optimism was fairly high. I mean, it was Max comeback year, this Bill O'Brien offense. It's all going to start to click, and they should be a playoff team again if it all goes well. And obviously the bottom fell out, and here we go into my first season watching this team without Bill Belichick as the head coach, and a really, really low bar. So you kind of alluded to it in that first answer, but does that take you back a little bit to have expectations this low?
Well, it does a bit, although it was night and day compared to what we're dealing with now.
Mm.
Because you go back far enough, and home games weren't on TV.
Oh yeah,
And that was a
you go to
common state
Portland.
of things. Like when I was a kid, I'd be like listening to the game on my friggin' clock radio in my bedroom, with like a loser when other kids were out like playing in the streets or whatever. It's a sad but true. And part of the reason I wrote From Darkness to Dynasty was, well, one, it's just well, I thank you for holding it up. Available wherever fine books are sold and online. Um, is
And
that
where unfined books are sold too. Yeah,
yeah,
they've
um,
got them.
my motivation was a couple things. One, I wanted to read this book, and the world had never written it. And I think there were just so many stories about just how bizarre and strange and things were. Yeah, they had moments where they'd get good all of a sudden out of the blue, and then immediately something cataclysmic would happen, and they'd be like back down at the bottom of the draft yet again.
Mm.
But the other reason is I was 22 when the Patriots won the first playoff game of my life. When my oldest son was 22, he saw them win 6 Super Bowls and go to 9 of them. And so, yeah, it's just understand like where you came from. If you know your history, you can appreciate your present and your future. And in so many ways, I'm like that guy who like grew up in the Depression. And even though I'm doing well now, I still like save tinfoil because you never know. Back in the day, I had to walk to school with a hot potato in my pocket to stay warm, and then eat the potato for lunch. Like I'm kind of that. As bad as last year was, I could honestly say, yeah, I've seen worse. Having said that, I was never expecting 4-13.
No.
I was on record as saying I like double-digit wins because the year before they had a lot of close games there. Mac Jones had been done dirty by the existence of Matt Patricia and him being over his head. And I poured all my hopes and aspirations into Bill O'Brien's return, and it blew up in my face like a cartoon cigar, Cam. So I'm kind of out of the optimism business for a little bit and trying to be more in like the reality business. I had a guy say to me not long ago, good guy. And he's going, come on, what do you think for wins this year? I go, I haven't really drilled down that far, but I think 6 would be great. He's like, what? And he was incredulous. And I said, look, I'm not predisposed towards negativity. It's kind of never been how I operate. In fact, I've got more crap for being optimistic about this team over the last whatever 20 years that I've been at Barstool than any other thing. But I said, I don't know what the head coach is all about. I don't know what the offensive coordinator does. I don't know what his system is. He hasn't called plays since 2009 in Buffalo. I don't know about the offensive line. I don't know the quarterback situation. And I go, why are you optimistic? I'd love to hear it. And he goes, well, look at the Red Sox. That was the logic. I'm like, I get that's great. I'm so happy they've overachieved, but we're trying to connect dots here that have no connection. So, again, hope I'm wrong, but this year is not about the win total. It's about are they going to build it in the proper way so that it's sustainable, so that they can get competitive, figure themselves out, but do it in a way that's responsible and not just looking for the sugar rush or a quick fix.
And if they are the Red Sox, then the tackle situation is certainly the Red Sox bullpen right now. I think that's an apt comparison. I do want to talk about the book a little bit because this is not lip service. It is one of my favorite books that I've ever read, and I think my dad really wanted me to read this book as someone who did have to go up to Portland, Maine sometimes after church to see the Patriots on TV when they wouldn't sell out, and he and my grandfather had season tickets the first year they went to, I guess it was Schaefer first and then Sullivan and Foxborough. I might be getting that wrong, but 71.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if I can real quick, just pause and say,
please.
back then, no franchise sold the naming rights to their stadium. Like if you built a stadium, it had this like idealism, this high-minded name to honor the greats. It was Soldier Field. It was, veterans. It was like War Memorial Coliseum. They not only sold the naming rights, which again, nobody did. They sold it to a beer company, but not just any beer company. The worst swill that has ever been brewed and put into cans was Schaefer beer. Like, look at all the hipster beers that have been brought back just in your lifetime, right? From PBR and Narragansett is huge again, or whatever.
Hey,
no one's asked for Schaefer back, and when they
that's telling. It's telling.
And in the research for the book, I found out that the one beer you could not get at Schaefer Stadium was Schaefer beer. And and its motto was, I'm not kidding you, try to look at this through 2024 sensibilities, right? Their motto was, Schaefer is the one beer to have when you're having more than one. Like, try getting that past Mothers Against Drunk Driving for a hot second, But anyway, so you're talking about the old stadium.
Yeah, no, so I think that's why he wanted me to read this book, because he was out there in the bleachers, and the people down the row would try to fit in 2 extra people into the bleacher seating, and just the bathrooms and the traffic and just this horrible experience on the surface that he absolutely loved. And we heard, my generation heard it all the time. Oh, you can't believe how bad the Patriots were. You can't believe it. And
Yep.
some of it might have been a little overblown when you look at the records, but I think what the point that you make so well in the book is that it was so much more than that. It was what we just talked about there. It was Schaefer Stadium. No one sold the naming rights. They didn't even sell Schaefer beer. It was they were laughable. They were just so uh, like irrelevant, almost
Right.
non-existent, only existent to be a punchline. And so when writing this book, how much of that was like, I just need to get it out there to the kids of this generation, kids like your sons, that this team was a punchline. I need to put some context into that. Was that kind of one of the main inspirations, other than you wanting to read the book too?
Yeah, positively, because I said if I can't tell this story in a funny way, I won't even bother. I just think like there's so many just little nuances to it, and a lot of it is like like oral history. I'm the
Hmm.
youngest of five, and my older brothers would take me to games because they were super easy to get to. Like the first sporting event I ever went to wasn't Fenway Park like a lot of kids have experienced. It's like, my brother's taking me to a game, and I was all excited. Like, I can't believe I'm going to walk in and see an actual NFL game like we watch on Sunday. Like, the Cowboys and the Steelers, actual NFL. And I walked in and I looked around. I have a very vivid memory of going, I'm just a kid here. This is my first experience, but even I can tell this place is a dump. It's like this, you know, Eastern Bloc architecture, just
Mm,
poured concrete bleachers. And again, those benches, it didn't bother me when I was a kid, but the numbers were, and I'm holding my fingers up shoulder width apart. The number that was your seat versus the number that's the other guy's seat were about that far apart. And this was
what?
the day before, you know, cheese stuffed crusts on pizzas, but still people were kind of fat. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know how they thought that this designated your seat. And then again, they were aluminum benches that would siphon all the heat out of your body
Ugh.
until, like, if you went to a game in December, you didn't get back up to 98.6 till like July of the following year. Like you'd be on the beach and just go, whoa, hey, all right, I'm not cold. Finally, great. Um, and there were fights every 30
Mm.
seconds. There's stories in there. I mean, just quick stories. The time when they made it to the playoffs, and the old expression, like, act like you've been there before. Well, Patriots fans weren't used to being there, so they didn't know how to act. So they tore down the goalposts, which no one was doing. I mean, that was a college thing that had died out 30 years earlier. But again, we're making this up as
Hadn't
we
been
go.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So they carried them across the field. Like they didn't just drop it and call it a day. They took them down the hill, across the parking lot, and were walking up Route 1 with them with the goalposts. And they found out what happens when thin walled steel touches a high tension wire, and
Oh,
guys got
Jesus.
zapped and ended up suing the team and the town and security and the insurance company or whatever. And I savaged them in the book, and I actually heard I got an email from the angry wife of one of those
No
guys.
way.
Yeah, because I had written, like, I don't know what part of him got burned, but I hope it's his reproductive organs, so he'll never have stupid
I
children like himself. And
do
she's like,
remember that.
how dare you call him my husband stupid? He had nothing to do with it. He was just walking down the street. And I was like, do I answer her back and just go, that's exactly what I would say if I got $1 million for getting zapped by
Yeah.
doing something idiotic. I go, honey, I was just walking down the street. But I know enough about electricity that it doesn't like leave the person that's holding the thing and jump across the road for some guy who's just out on a stroll with 50, 60,000 other idiots. So
Walking elderly
yeah,
ladies across the street. Yeah.
yeah,
Being a
yeah,
saint,
exactly.
being an
Just
absolute saint.
being a good citizen,
Yeah.
exactly, of a child of God like the rest of us. There was a time when they drafted a guy and had a whole big conference call with all the assembled press, and his mom answered like, "Hi, we're calling from the Patriots. Well, we're looking for your son. Oh, he's at the hospital." why is he in the hospital? This is their first round pick. He got his knee operated on. They had no idea. And then later on, they
Back when that
started
was
to
career
draft.
ending. Like you didn't come
Exactly.
back
Yeah,
from those. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like a medieval barber opened your knee with like leeches and a rusty scalpel, a rusty, straight razor. And then later in that draft, they started to draft someone until one of the scouts jumped in and said, "No, no, no, not him." Why would happen? He's dead. They almost drafted a dead guy.
This is great, man. I mean, going there must have been like your first bachelor party, and it's the Foxy Lady in Brockton on a Tuesday afternoon. Like, here we go, Schaefer Stadium. This is the NFL, baby. Like,
Yeah,
that's
as Stewie
incredible.
Griffin said, on a Tuesday afternoon, they didn't exactly have their A squad. I saw bullet holes. You know? But
Oh my
oh yeah,
gosh, that's
yeah,
what those are the stories I hear. Yeah.
yeah. There's one where they had a guy named his nickname was Harpio, but his name was Gladio. And he actually went to Notre Dame and is mentioned briefly in the bar scene in Rudy. Well, he was at the game, like he got cut like that week, didn't make the roster. And so he shows up to the game and he's having beers with a buddy of his, they're tailgating and stuff. He gets in there. His friend goes to grab 2 more beers before kickoff, and he hears over the PA system Bob Gladio report to the Patriots sideline. All right, so he goes down there, and again, he's a few cocktails into his afternoon, and they go, "Hey, we got a guy injured. Suit up." He's like, "What? Yeah, yeah." So he throws on the pads and a jersey, and he hustles out there on the kickoff team. His buddy comes back with 2 beers in his hands, doesn't know where Bob is, until he hears over the PA system, "Tackle on the play by Bob Gladio of the Patriots." Like this happened. Like they put a drunk guy on
That's
the
awesome.
field, and again, it to the point where it's hard to believe that they were actually like a professional football team. I
Mm,
never mind an NFL team. They didn't really seem like an AFL team.
mm,
They
yeah.
played in Fenway Park, and there's video of this. It was did 100th anniversary of Fenway Park in 2012, and NFL Films did one about football being played there. And there's just film of guys just like grabbing a field goal as it goes through the goalpost and then just running out the center field wall at Fenway, just going home with a free football. And so yeah, it's hard to believe that they
Unbelievable.
went from being irrelevant to what they were for 20 years, which is so hyper relevant that they became a national obsession. And
The most
America
relevant
hated
team
them.
in sports. Yeah. The most
To the
relevant.
right. But in sports and also like part of just the zeitgeist. I mean,
Yeah.
like, when some air pressure in a football was leading the nightly newscasts, like not
Right.
wars or economies or, you know, uh, uh, elections or whatever, but whether or not a quarterback took some air out of some footballs was the top story in America. It's bizarre. I keep thinking like I'm going to wake up one day and find out that during the Snow Bowl, I like jumped out of my couch and I whacked my head or something, and that like I'm coming to on the floor, and it's 2002, and it was ruled
Patrick
in.
Duffy's coming out of the shower and he's like,
Yeah,
What are you talking about?" Yeah.
exactly. I wake up next to Suzanne Plachette, and it was all just a
It's not
dream.
bad.
Yeah, which I would I would take. I don't know if you watch old TV, but
Oh
she was
yeah.
an absolute knockout.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's nuts that as they've became front and center of American culture at a time when football became front and center of American culture,
Yeah.
that like we get to experience this. I get to like do it for a job. It's bonkers, and I as bad as the last couple of years have been, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, and growing up in it ain't that bad either. Let me just say, I know your sons have probably told you it's not bad either. And I will still see stories around the sports landscape that I'm like, in this crazy age of social media, right? That I'm like, if this had happened 6 years ago and it was the Patriots, this would have been the biggest story in America. And like every couple months, Jerry, I see that and I'm like, if Brady had done this, are you kidding? Like, you know what I mean? It was that big a deal. And so now you mentioned, it's been a lean couple of years here, and it's first project rebuild since I've been watching the team. And so I guess my question after talking about all that in darkness to dynasty would be, how far would this have to fall in order for this to be a punchline the way they were before, really before 2001? How far would we have to go to get there?
Yeah, it would take at least 3 or 4 years, like the one that we just experienced, and even that, they had one of the league's top 10 defenses. I would say
Mhm.
top 8 or whatever. They still had a great coach. In that respect, it wasn't rock bottom. And there's a lot here that they can build on. The times I'm talking about are like the late 70s. Chuck Fairbanks had built a wagon, like loaded
Mhm.
up on draft picks, crushed them. Like there's years where they had like 3 first round picks and they all turned out to be home runs. And then just as he built the first division winner on this in team history, it turned out he violated his contract, signed another contract to go to the University of Colorado, was making recruiting calls on Patriots time in his office using their phone to recruit players. Nothing like that had ever happened. Fast forward to 1996, Bill Parcells turns his team around. He takes him to a Super Bowl. It turns out he had taken a job with the Jets. They found him at the team hotel in New Orleans that got the phone record. He was making calls on behalf of the Jets while he was supposed to be preparing for Green Bay. 18 years apart, both of those things happened. And what happened, with Fairbanks, they were back as like they're the number one pick within like 3 years. It didn't go quite that badly during the Pete Carroll era, but it was trending down. And worse than that, like in the Pete Carroll era, was that Bobby Greer was the GM and he was handing out contracts like it was Halloween, like they
Mm.
were fun size Snickers to everyone, and had so much guaranteed money being paid to guys who weren't on the roster that Belichick couldn't save money by cutting guys because they still couldn't get under the cap. And
Yeah.
in 2001, he said he got under it by like $40, I think was his quote, and somehow was able to cobble it together. So, you really have to go back to like the early 80s to the early 90s to get it to be this bad. The Rod Russ
Mm.
team,
Yeah.
where they
Ooh.
went 1-15, and after a sick blowout loss, like I forget that the final score isn't in my head, but let's call it like 37-3 or something like that. He said, "Well, I'm proud of my guy's effort." It's like, like we're like Wayne and Garth. Squeeze me, baking powder. What? Like what would it have taken for you to be not proud of them? But you also had scandals. There were arrests all the time. There was,
Mhm.
you had Irving Fryer was a number one overall pick. He was getting
Jackass.
into trouble with the law every other week. There were really the moment that helped save the Patriots. And this was one of the more popular things I wrote in the early days of Barstool was Zeke Moat pulled his Johnson out in front of a female reporter, became a huge national controversy, like this huge conversation about women in the locker rooms and do they belong there? Because they were still pioneers at that
Mhm.
time, and it blew up. It went away. And then the owner of the team, who was this guy, Victor Kayem, he was a razor blade magnate. He went to some banquet after it all kind of blown over and cracked a joke about it. And every millionaire in the NFL, I'm sure they're all billionaires now, but they were millionaires then, all just like spit their Chivas Regal all over their butler's jackets, going, "What did he do? He did what?" So they forced him to sell the team. He sells it to this guy from Anheuser-Busch, James Orthwine, who then fires everybody, brings in Bill Parcells, who drafts Drew Bledsoe. So we owe a debt of gratitude to this guy who is a complete a-hole and like super inappropriate to someone who's just trying to do her job. And if it wasn't for him, who knows? They might have just like been moved, and we never would have seen any of the good things happen later on. So Zeke Moat, you're a terrible human being, but your awfulness might have saved this franchise.
Oh, and thank God for it. And here we are. The rest is history. They go into 2024, as we mentioned, a new
Mhm.
era, no more Belichick, Jerry Maye slotted in there, and another franchise quarterback drafted. 0 for 1 so far on that one, with extenuating circumstances. I'm not going to put it all on Mac. I never have. But Drake Maye in the building now, and it has been a circus the last couple of weeks in terms of how the media is reacting to Drake Maye. First, before we get into that, about how the media is reacting to it, what are your thoughts on Drake Maye? I know you take the draft very seriously as someone who's just seen as a fan writing a blog, but you're way into this. So what are your thoughts on Drake Maye and how he can help the Patriots this year if he can?
Okay, I will answer that by saying the guy who raised me to be a draft nerd, my oldest brother Jack, and we talked to each other frequently leading up to the draft, and we made a deal with each other that if the Patriots draft Drake Maye, we're each going to get out the best bottle of whiskey that we have in the cabinet, pour it into our favorite highball glass, give ourselves two fingers, and toast to our success. And yeah, I had one that I hadn't opened from Christmas. And that's the, and I haven't touched it since. It was just that special occasion. So yeah, I was thrilled. And God bless Elliot Wolf for not jerking around on that one.
Mm.
Because you remember how it took Chicago to the last second to draft Caleb Williams? Like, you knew this, you
You
know,
had
right?
months to make this pick.
Yeah, right. They knew this by like November when it was clear that
Yeah.
Carolina wasn't going to be kicked out of the first spot. But it was just like, and the Patriots are on the clock, and the Patriots pick is in. So I say this about May, understanding that he's he's raw for sure. You and I, as we're speaking, we're about a week away from him turning 22. When I was 21 years old, about to turn 22, you didn't want me taking care of your house plants while you're away for the weekend. Trust me. I'm happy to be patient with him. I think, as the scout said, it's his upside. Too many times in the last, I don't know, really since Brady left, or even the last couple of years of Brady, you watch too many other games where you see that the league is not about Brady running an offense the way he did, masterfully having this thing like, knowing all the nuances and knowing where this guy's supposed to go based on that read or whatever. It's about the throw is there or it's not. And the play breaks down and you're out of structure and your quarterback, it looks like he's sacked, but he slips a tackle and then he evades three more and then he guns it 30 yards upfield. That hasn't been part of the Patriots package throughout the whole dynasty era, and certainly not since then. Everything has to work precisely. The offense that they've been running up until last year is a German engineered precision driving machine. And it needs a lot of time in the shop, and it's great when it's working perfectly. But if it's not, the wheels come off. And I want a guy who can do what May does, which is make plays out of structure, react to things. Like, not everything has to be perfect. Get something out of a receiver who maybe doesn't understand that he has to read this coverage in exactly this way, the kind of thing that Brady, and I just posted about this morning as you and I are speaking, Brady gave a long answer to Stephen A. Smith in an interview where he talked about, like, I'd look over and I'd see a guy who I couldn't trust because he's looking at the sidelines, not knowing where he's supposed to be. That guy's done. He's done. I'm ignoring him. So now we're playing 10 on 11. And I'd look to Wes Welker. I'd look to Julian Edelman. Well, I want a guy who's not necessarily going to do that, who just is going to be smart, but a smart athlete with high-end traits and a huge skill set and a giant arm. And I see all of those things in May. He needs refinement, and I'm willing to wait. But for now, I'm already looking at him as ahead of schedule from what I thought. And what are your thoughts on that? Am I completely off base here?
No, I find myself agreeing with you basically in that entire assessment. I mean, I was a guy who really liked Jaden Daniels coming out of the draft, and but obviously by about a week before we knew that wasn't going to be a guy available in 3, and I think it was actually you who wrote the blog about Jaden Daniels and his time gets the ball out real quick. And I was like, I love that because this offensive line stinks. So
Right.
and that was always a great Brady trait, right? Was getting the ball out quick. And so everyone would say, oh, Andrew Luck has the ball more in the air. He throws it deeper, but who gives a shit, right? I mean, Brady gets it out quick and completes all his passes. So I really like that about Daniels. But Maye, I think if nothing else, he's given you something that you didn't have with Mac Jones. And I was a Mac guy, is that he's got a rocket for an arm. And I don't want to sound too much like Al Davis, like that's the only thing that matters, but already he can give you an extra wrinkle of not only getting outside the pocket, which Mac didn't really do, but also someone who you feel like with the right development can beat man coverage, which I don't know that Mac was ever going to be great at. He was a touch passer and go with God. But I think Drake Maye just gives an extra wrinkle there. And I'm more worried about the support staff around him, because we saw with Mac 3 different OCs in 3 years. Well, if you can call one set of offensive coordinators, defense and special teams guys coaching an offense, and then 2 other offensive coordinators in his 3 seasons. So I'm even higher on the Maye pick than I was at the time of the pick, Jerry. I feel even better now. But it is going to take time, and I'm glad that it's not just, hey, let's get him out there. This offensive line right now, it's a suicide mission to send him out there, but just go ahead, go do it. The way that, Washington does year after year, the way Indianapolis does year after year. And so I'm a fan of the pick. I'm wondering when we're going to see him. And that kind of leads me into my next question that's been speculation throughout all of camp. When are we going to see the kid? And Jacoby Brissett is the most pro ready, but boy, did he suck in preseason week 2, the 0 quarterback rating. So why not start Drake Maye week 1? What have your thoughts been as someone who's been at camp, who's been watching this and following closely and seeing this just media reaction throughout the summer? Like we said, the Patriots have been the most covered team in history in this century. And so we shouldn't be too surprised, but it feels like just a crazy, crazy scene when it comes to these very good writers who are out there covering the team and how they're reacting to each day of practice with a quarterback situation on a team that has so many more issues.
Yeah, well, that's part of the media game, I guess, and I really do what I can not to just do the obvious clickbait thing. And I think that's part of what Barstool has been like, the rock upon which our church was built, is that just be honest, be yourself. It's okay to overreact sometimes because you're a fan, because you're not just trying to pretend to be neutral or whatever.
Yeah.
Get too high, get too low. Winning is great, losing sucks. And I've always leaned into that. And I got way out over my ski tips on Mac Jones. Another guy that I was running around the house screaming his name when the pick before them came in, and there was a trade, and it was the Jets. And I said, they're not going to draft a quarterback. They just did. And I'm running around the house, and my wife's going, who is this you're talking about now? I'm going, Mac Jones. I've been talking about him nonstop since like December. Oh, well, whatever. She just went back to her phone, and, again, nothing not to feel good about with him after that rookie year. The thing I loved about him was what he had between the ears. Like, he wasn't going to be super athletic or whatever, wasn't going to have a huge arm, but he was going to be able to look over a defense and go, okay, I know where I'm going with the ball. And we saw some of that, and then it all just went pear-shaped on us, obviously. With Maye, the arm certainly helps, but I think what helps more is seeing him in live fire exercises, more or less. Well, more so in the game than in practice against the Eagles. But when he got the red contact jersey off, and now you're seeing him have a chance to display the athleticism that you don't get, like the think of the red jersey as like training wheels. Do I really know if this kid can ride the bike? Okay, well, now we get the wheels off. And I saw him, there was one play in particular where it was a little slip screen coming out of the like away from the flow of the play. He turned around on the play action, and there was a rusher right in his grill mix. And he got the ball out to, I think it might have been to Austin Hooper. I'll think of which, hold on. You know what? I got a roster.
It was a tight end, if I remember. Yeah.
It was Mitchell Wilcox. Yeah, it was number 87, which can't be easy for him to run that route, carrying an 87 Patriots jersey around. That thing must weigh a metric ton. But it was a reaction play, and he made it. And some guys just have that sense of the pocket. Brady did in a way that Drew Bledsoe never did. Like
Statue.
Bledsoe would be back there and not feel it, not have that. I don't know how guys sense this thing, but some people have it. It's innate. And I don't know how you can practice it, and so far, and it's a small sample size, it sort of feels like Maye has been able to make plays despite the protection falling down around him. Having said that, do I trust the tackles as they're currently constituted? No, but I mean, Elliott Wolf seems pretty dug in. You hear his comments, and he's saying this is our starting five. This is how we see it happening. I like to think our starting left tackle isn't on the roster at the moment. Like somebody's going to shake loose, and they're going to be able to pay this guy and just a plug and play professional left tackle, and not Vidarian Lowe. And you know what I mean?
It sounds like a cuss word at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I'm already prepared to use Vidarian as like an adjective. Like, well, that I don't know. That seems extremely Vidarian to me so far. So I do though feel like that timeline that I had in mind, like mid-season, maybe not at all the season, maybe on the Patrick Mahomes sit for a year and watch, and you can start week 17 timeline, which I would have been fine with. But it feels to me over the last couple of weeks that line is moving forward. Whether it moves all the way up to like the way Mac Jones did it, where boom, you're the starter. This is it, which I looked it up. That was on August 31st that they named him the starter and released Cam Newton. If we get past that point and it's not been made official, I'm like, okay, maybe a month. I saw, Siciliano from NFL Network, Andrew Siciliano, right?
Yeah.
I've got that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Andrew.
Yeah, he did a TikTok that someone posted on Twitter that I thought was really interesting. And he says, you look at their schedule, and the first 4 weeks are a bit of a nightmare. 3 games on the road. You're facing all elite defenses. You're at Cincinnati, you're somewhere in there. You're at San Francisco. You get the Jets in there in week 3. After that, they have 4 straight games at home. And you know what? That might feel like a pretty good timeline. Like, put the veteran who's super capable. No one's ever going to think Jacoby Brissett is not a more than capable NFL quarterback, but no one's ever going to think he's going to knock on the door of a Pro Bowl bid either. I think he's exactly the guy you need for a bridge. So maybe a month. That might be my sweet spot that I'm going with right now. Let's see what we got with the offensive line. What the Pats have always traditionally done is treated September like an extension of training camp anyway. And especially now that pads practices are so limited and you've only got 3 preseason games. So if I had to pick a time, I'd say, week 5, assuming Jacoby Brissett is still with us.
Gotcha.
That's
a good way to put it.
Behind those guys, I'm not sure that I would sell him life insurance. I'm not sure that I would give him like some unripened fruit, because he might not live to see it turn ripe. I don't know, but maybe we'll be wrong. They still have so much work cut out for him. But I just personally see Maye as that guy who's figuring it out. It happens in sports. If you ever coach kids, you'll find someone who seems completely lost, and then sometimes it can be the learning curve gets a little flatter for him because he's gotten there, or sometimes it's just a snap of a finger. It's like, okay, on Tuesday this kid didn't get it. Now look at him; he's making tackles or whatever. So, I'm for now. If I gun to my head, I'm going to say week 5.
Week 5. All right. I'm holding you to it. Okay.
Yeah. No, don't hold a gun to my head.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'll keep the gun out of the equation, but
And also there's no rush, as maybe the greatest band in music history, the SOS band in 1980 sang, baby, do it. Take your time. Do it right. We can do it, baby. Yeah.
Wow,
I just
that was
quoted the
beautiful.
SOS band. Jeez,
That was
I
elegant.
can't believe it. That's it. I'm done. I'm just
All right. Who had it?
job.
Who had the SOS band reference? Okay, we got some winners over here.
They've got another hit in them. I could feel it. It's only been the one, but them and Dexy's Midnight Runner are gonna come back.
Yes, I'm feeling it. I'm so feeling that. Just give them some time. Jeez.
Yeah, I'm not pretending to be young here. Okay, let's just say I'm not. Well, is as Drake sings, like, yeah, not my thing.
Yeah, I'm there with you, fortunately or unfortunately. But I mean, we've seen so many examples of these quarterbacks these days where there is no like set timeline. We've seen so many guys. I mean, the 2021 draft class gets in there right away, and 3 of them are traded before the end of their first contract. And yet we do see guys like Mahomes who basically sit a whole year. Josh Allen, who gets out there and takes the lumps for a whole year, and he's one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. So it's not it's like being a play-by-play broadcaster. There's no like linear way to get into the business. You just have to be good and figure it out. So I do want two quick fire questions on you before I get you out of here. A guy has a spot in both of our hearts for this Patriots team. He's actually right behind the flag here at Baylor Bear, Tyquan Thornton. No relation, if I'm being correct there. Is he going to? Is he, we could, if we trace it back far enough, who knows? With Juju cut and unfortunately another receiver going down with an injury in the preseason, that week 2 game, is Tyquan on this team as you see the roster right now, Jerry?
Yes, I think he is. There was a time about halfway through camp where one of the writers who's there every day said he's been the best receiver in camp. Now, even as I say that, I've got a lot more faith in the future of Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, because Tyquan, as we've seen, is a guy who you can throw an invisibility cloak over and you will not even know he's on the field for like the longest period of time, practice or otherwise. I just think there's too much raw potential there. And now maybe that we have a quarterback, or eventually we'll have a starting quarterback who's got a strong arm, that you start getting him in some go routes. I mean, I saw him at his best in camp in one-on-one drills against Christian Gonzalez, who has my complete faith, getting off the line of scrimmage, like putting on moves and getting a free release. And that's not an easy thing to do off a press corner with Gonzalez's skill. So I think he does. Admittedly, he's on the bubble. They're going with a lot of 3 receiver sets, which I didn't think they were going to do, because Cleveland last year, when Alex Van Pelt was there, seemed to run a lot of 2 tight end sets and 2 wide outs. So I think their base is an 11 with 3 wide. So there's room for him on here. So I'm going to say that's a big yes. And let's hope in year 3 he can finally be worth the investment I made in a Tyquan Thornton jersey. Real quick, yes. I put out when they first got off his rookie number, they went from 51 to 11. I did a Twitter poll and I said, okay, 11's my number. Obviously, Thornton's my name. Should I get his jersey? Actually, it was should I get his jersey? A, of course you should. B, no, that's a jinx. Or C, what are you, 12 years old? Well, A won overwhelmingly. I got thousands of votes and it crushed it. By the time it arrived in the mail, he was already injured. So there you go. My record of getting guys' jerseys is perfect.
Oh, man. And if he doesn't make the team, or if he never quite reaches the heights that Bethel Johnson did, I will be sending my Tyquan Thornton jersey to you for you to sign rather than Tyquan, if that's okay. I think that's a good way to make up for it.
You and I obviously had $95 we didn't need.
Yeah, apparently
burning a hole in our pocket.
I guess I'm a Baylor alum, so I had to do it. I felt that Stidham jersey is also that's seen better days. I do want to throw one more at you. As kind of we talked a lot about the book today, From Darkness to Dynasty, the first 40 years of the New England Patriots. And I'm wondering, because you've written other books, you wrote 5 Rings, which I have, which is now obsolete. Fortunately, we became 6 Rings. And so I'm wondering, if you could pick one season in the Patriots history that you were like, I would love to go in depth, week by week, story by story, and write about this Patriots team, which one would it be and why?
You know what? This is going to seem like an odd answer because it ended so horribly, but
it's the perfect answer, I think. I really think it is.
I fell in love with the 1976 Patriots. Yes, I know it's a deep pull.
Yeah.
They were 3-11 the year before. And this was in a time when God, I'm sorry about another ancient reference, way older than the SOS band. But at the time, the Amazon of the day was the Sears catalog. And the Christmas
Yes.
catalog was called the Wish Book, was like the kid Bible. It would come just around the start of school and I'd go through it and pick out stuff that I wanted. I read it cover to, at least the kids section cover to cover. And you could outfit your entire world in NFL gear, waste baskets and pennants and bedspreads and sweatshirts and novelty helmets and crap. And under probably 90% of it in just little agate type at the bottom would say, not available in the following team, Patriots. Because it would be like, well, why are we going to have the factory order anything for that team? They're probably going to, move to like friggin' California at some point. Well, that team went from 3-11 to 11-3. Steve Grogan was installed as the quarterback. The headlines were all Grogan's heroes. It was they crushed in a row Pittsburgh, Miami, and then the Raiders. And the Raiders they rolled up on them like 48-17. And these were the
That's like the
Raiders that I
three teams
already
of the
hated.
70s right there. Like those are the teams. And the Cowboys
100%.
throw them in there. Yeah.
Yeah, like those three teams probably won, 6 or 8 of the previous 10 Super Bowls. And then they get to the wild card and they go to Oakland, and it was the biggest bag job in the history of sports. Look it up or look it up in my book because I got
Sugar
bills to
Bear.
pay too.
Yeah.
But there are players on that team that were convinced that the NFL had that game in the bag because they were trying to get a new stadium built for Al Davis in Oakland, and they wanted them to win. Well, that team ended up winning the Super Bowl that year, and the only loss that they had in the season was that regular season game to the Patriots, and the Pats should have beat them twice. And it all came down to 2 plays, really. One, Russ Francis, the great tight end, the proto Gronk, on a 3rd down pass, the ball hit him between the 8 and the 1 and fell to the ground. The reason he didn't catch it is because Phil Villapiano had his arms around his arms in a bear hug, and the ball hit him on the ground, and the refs just went like this. And then one of the last plays of the game, Ken Stabler goes back to pass, incomplete pass, and Ray Hamilton, Sugar Bear Ray Hamilton, was called for the worst roughing the passer call in history. And this was back when you could hit a quarterback. This wasn't like it was today, where if you're thinking in pure thought, it's 15 yards and
It's still
whatever.
50-50 today, by the way, that
Oh yeah,
specific play. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it was completely legal. And yeah, it was the worst ever. But there's something about a team. I read this once in a book about the Red Sox back in the day, and I guess it's not completely true, but the sentiment is there. Is that you glory in a team that's triumphant, but you fall in love with a team in defeat, and that's kind of how that team was for me. And like it's that game, that Sugar Bear Hamilton game. That's what turned me into. That was like Batman's parents being killed in an alley. That's what turned me into the dark, brooding, tortured vigilante of the night that I've since become.
Interesting. I was thinking you were going to pick either 76 or 85. So I cheated. I took 2, but I got 1 right. So I'm happy to hear that. I lied. I have one more question for you.
Shoot.
Because as I mentioned at the top a while ago, we are both sons of the Irish Riviera, as it were. So I have to ask, favorite bar pizza?
Okay. Great question.
Because they don't know it here. I live in Texas now. They don't know it. They have nothing even close to it. So every time I'm back up home, I am loading up on my bar pizza, and everyone's got a favorite. It's like having a bean pot team. So I got to know which one's your favorite.
Yeah. And fun fact about the bar pizza thing, and I didn't know this until someone told me live on a local radio show. My pal Kerry Byrne, founder of Cold Hard Football Facts and a pizza and food expert now with the New York Post. He let me know that bar pizza only exists in the South Shore. And I'm like, what? How? You're kidding me. The stuff I grew up on. He goes, yeah, absolutely. That's
Can't
it.
even get it in Boston.
Yes. And that it started in like Dorchester, and it made its way through like Randolph down Route 37. I go, so Route 37 is like the Silk Road of
of the best pizza on the planet. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Weymouth guy. I think I'm gonna have to stick with my loyalty and go with Denley's. Denley's in
Okay.
Weymouth, which
All
I've got
right.
some Weymouth friends who are still resentful because Dave Portnoy gave a great review, a pizza review to Denley's, and they're mad because now it's hard to get there because
Yeah.
everybody wants the stuff. Like they've probably added extra ovens and extra staff or whatever.
Tough
How about
world.
yours? Because I'm gonna go to whatever you recommend.
Okay, okay, because there is, I can never just give a straight answer. So my
Yeah.
local is Damien's in Hanson. I live in
Oh,
Rockland, right over the line, so it's literally like 5 minutes away, and
mhm.
I love it. It's great, and I love the atmosphere there and everything. It's total dive. I love it. But my favorite pure pizza is Linwood. It's got to be Linwood. I know that's so many people's favorite, but it's absolutely that's the top for me. I got to take my girlfriend there a few months ago for the first time. She's not from Massachusetts, and it was like the mecca for me. You know, it was like this heavenly
Right.
experience, cash only. I couldn't even get a beer there because I had an out-of-state license, and they don't even do that. Like it was an incredible moment. I saw two guys at the bar who must have been in their 50s, both wearing Canadian tuxedos and taking like 6 pies to go. It was like, I'm here. I'm in heaven.
There you
So
go. And
Linwood and Damien's for sure. And
I
Venus
mean,
too.
no disrespect to either of those places because they're great establishments too. If you told me I could only go to one of those that you mentioned for the rest of my life, I could live a good happy life. And also a quick shout out to the good people at Warren's in Columbian Square.
Yes.
So
Ooh, yes.
that's kind of the place where my friends and I, if we're getting together, if we go to somebody's wake or whatever, it's automatic we're going to go to Warren's. So I respect that, but there's so many places to choose from. It's a target rich environment. And if you don't have bar pizza where you guys come from, I don't know how you make it through your sad and pathetic existence. So I'm glad you and I appreciate the largesse, the embarrassment of riches that we grew up with.
Right. It's like they don't even know what pizza is. And I'm sure the Cameo was still pretty ancient even when you were growing up too. So
And it
down
hasn't changed. I
there. Not
swear
a
to you,
bit.
I saw Jaws there when I was 11, and then when my son was 11, got to see Jaws there again because a friend of mine
Jesus.
was managing the place as like a part-time job, and
Mm,
he gave us a private screening. And they
that's
haven't changed the wallpaper, they haven't changed the
awesome.
bathroom fixtures. I'm not sure that they've cleaned the popcorn machine. I wouldn't have it any other way. So I love the Columbian Square. You can go to it, and it's largely what it was when I was a kid. And shout out to Olympic Pizza too. Not a bar
Mhm.
place, but great
Not bad though.
takeout
Yeah.
as well. Oh yeah, I'm telling you, it's Weymouth is a special place. Lord knows it's not for everyone. A lot of people don't really understand it. But no matter where I live, I'm always going to be from Weymouth. I'll just end this real quick story. For the 2 years I was on WEEI, um, Weymouth kind of unwittingly became a character on the show because we'd get these calls. Hey Jerry, I know you from blah blah blah, and we were talking about. It was, remember when Chandler Jones walked into the police station and he
Oh, yeah.
was having some kind of he was all hopped up on
Breakdown of the
goofballs
synthetic.
or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, and we were talking about marijuana and sports or whatever, and we got a call. Jonathan from Weymouth, go ahead. Because yeah, hi Jerry, you go up around the street from me, around the corner, and you graduated with my brother Michael. Sure, sure. How you doing? He goes, and guys, look, I could roll a joint when I was 4 years old. And I go, you know what? He really could. And Michael Holly's yelling, no more Weymouth. No more Weymouth on the show. No more. Hey Jerry, oh, it's Cliffy and Davo and Fitzy and I just like, okay, but that's a true story. My
Oh
home.
man.
Yeah, yeah.
There's many like it, but often imitated, never duplicated. Shout out to Charlie Coyle and the busiest Dunkin' Donuts in the world. Jerry Thornton of Barstool Sports. This is going to be a weird Patriot season. You could follow along with him the whole way. Jerry, it has been such a pleasure. We went way over time, but thank you so much for coming on. I really, really enjoyed this talk.
Hey Cam, it's the first time we've talked. Let's not let it be the last. I had a blast talking to you, and yeah, it's gonna be a hell of a story, to quote Julian Edelman. Let's just hope it's a good one. Let's hope that 4 months from now things are looking better than they were, you know, a year plus 4 months ago, like when it just seemed like there was no hope on the horizon. So, but yeah, it's going to be a great journey. We're all on this crazy ride together, and I really appreciate being along with it with you.
We are Rogue Media Sports.